Welcome back to Only Talk Sports. We talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm Ross Jeffrey. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. The Week 1 games of the 2023 NFL season were really fun to watch, and I think that the Week 2 slate has the potential to be another great week of NFL action, and I'm going to get into it and preview and predict every single Week 2 NFL game just like I did for Week 1. Now, to start out for the Prime Video Thursday night football game between the Minnesota Vikings and the Philadelphia Eagles. This is a really solid game to have on a Thursday night, a pretty good matchup between these two teams. Now, Minnesota, don't know if they were looking ahead, but they lost last week to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a really surprising loss. Kirk Cousins did not play his best game, and Minnesota has a lot of questions that they're going to have to get fixed if they want to have a shot in this game. Philadelphia, they looked really good last week, beating the New England Patriots. They kind of struggled in that game, but they did enough on the road. That was a tough environment, and they pulled out a win there. And this game is at home now for Philadelphia. Minnesota has a shot here, but I do think that Philadelphia is going to be too much on defense for Kirk Cousins and Jalen Hurts. He's going to find a way to score enough points on the offensive end. I got Philadelphia beating Minnesota 31-21 on Thursday Night Football. Now, to move on to the Sunday games, you got the Green Bay Packers and the Atlanta Falcons on Fox. This should be a solid game here because both teams are 1-0. Green Bay looked really good last week in their win over the Chicago Bears. Jordan Love, he actually proved to a lot of his doubters that he is a capable quarterback, whereas Desmond Ridder, he did not throw for a bunch of yards against the Carolina Panthers last week in their win, but Atlanta still looked pretty solid overall, especially on defense, and that would probably make you believe that the Falcons could beat the Green Bay Packers, especially because they are at home for the second straight week. But Green Bay, they were able to win at the Chicago Bears. I think that they're going to win again 28-17 over the Atlanta Falcons. As long as Jordan Love plays well for a second straight week, Green Bay should win. Now you got the Las Vegas Raiders at the Buffalo Bills on CBS. Las Vegas, they won last week in a really close game over the Denver Broncos, whereas the Buffalo Bills, they lost to the New York Jets on Monday Night Football on a punt return for a touchdown in overtime. Josh Allen threw 3 interceptions. He's going to have to tone down those picks, or Buffalo could lose again, but this game is at home this time. Jimmy Garoppolo looked pretty soft for the Las Vegas Raiders, but I don't think that the Raiders are going to be able to get this one done. I'm going to go with the Buffalo Bills to beat the Las Vegas Raiders 24-21. Up next, you got the Baltimore Ravens and the Cincinnati Bengals on CBS. Cincinnati surprisingly got shellacked by the Cleveland Browns last week. They did not play well at all whatsoever. Joe Burrow really struggled, whereas Baltimore, they were able to win last week against the Houston Texans. Lamar Jackson played solid football, and I think that the Ravens, you would think, would have a great shot to win, but something tells me Cincinnati's going to bounce back here. They're at home this time, and yes, they looked awful last week against the Cleveland Browns, but I am going to go with the Cincinnati Bengals to beat the Baltimore Ravens 21-17, but if Cincinnati loses, then they could be on panic watch for the rest of this season. Then you got the Detroit Lions and the Seattle Seahawks. That game is on Fox, and Seattle, they were a team that surprisingly lost to the Los Angeles Rams last week. They did not play good football in that game. The Rams beat them fairly easily by around 17 points, whereas the Detroit Lions, they surprised the NFL world and beat the Kansas City Chiefs on Thursday Night Football. Granted, the Chiefs did not have Travis Kelce, but that was still a big win for the Detroit Lions, and I feel like that the Detroit Lions could keep the momentum going here. I'm going to go with the Lions to beat the Seattle Seahawks 28-14. Geno Smith's going to have to play a much better football game if the Seahawks want to win, and Jared Goff, he's got a lot of weapons on the offensive end, and their defense was pretty solid against the Chiefs. I think that they're going to be able to win this game, especially now that they're at home this week. Then you got the Tennessee Titans and the Los Angeles Chargers. The Titans really struggled on offense last week against the Saints, falling short in that game. Ryan Tannehill with 3 interceptions. Derrick Henry, he's always solid on the ground, but he can't do it all, whereas Justin Herbert looked great for the Chargers. Their offense looked explosive, and even though they did lose to the Miami Dolphins last week, 36-34, they still look good in that game, and even though the Chargers defense, you could argue, could give up some points to Tennessee, I don't feel like Tennessee's offense is going to be explosive enough to get the win. I'm going with the Chargers to beat the Titans 28-10. I think Herbert's going to be able to lead the Chargers to a fairly comfortable win. Then you got the Chicago Bears at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Fox. Chicago, they lost last week to the Green Bay Packers. It wasn't a great performance for Justin Fields. They didn't get embarrassed, but it still wasn't a good look, especially because a lot of people were not picking Green Bay to win. And then Tampa Bay, they were a surprise team last week, beating the Minnesota Vikings. Baker Mayfield actually actually had a good game, probably one of his best performances since the great season he had with the Cleveland Browns. I feel like that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, now that they're at home and the Chicago Bears did struggle in week 1, I'm going to go with Baker Mayfield to win his second game in a row and get the win 28-21 over the Chicago Bears, and a really surprising start for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers if they can get their second straight win. Then you have the Kansas City Chiefs at the Jacksonville Jaguars. This is a great game right here because the Jacksonville Jaguars, they did beat the Indianapolis Colts last week, but they didn't blow them out, and they did not win too impressively. And then you look at Kansas City, they lost to the Detroit Lions, but granted, Travis Kelce should be back. Patrick Mahomes is still a fantastic quarterback. He's still so dynamic and explosive, and even though this game is at Jacksonville, and Jacksonville has a really good shot to win because they are a much better team at home, I'm going with Kansas City to beat Jacksonville 31-28, but this could be one of the best games of the week 2 slate in the NFL. Then you have the Indianapolis Colts at the Houston Texans on Fox. This is the last game of the 1 o'clock window. Indianapolis lost last week to Jacksonville, whereas the Houston Texans, they were not able to pull out a win against the Baltimore Ravens. I think this is a game that could go either way. Neither team looked that great in week 1, but neither team got embarrassed in week 1 as well. Anthony Richardson actually played a solid game for the Colts. He didn't turn the ball over as much as Bryce Young did for the Carolina Panthers in week 1, whereas the Houston Texans, C.J. Stroud tried his best, and he didn't throw any picks, but he just was not given much protection. This game is at Houston, but I'm actually going to go with the Colts to beat the Texans 21-14. I feel like Anthony Richardson will pull out the win. Then you have the San Francisco 49ers traveling to the Los Angeles Rams on Fox at 4:05. This is one of those games where I think some people might pick an upset here and go with the Rams. They look really good in week 1, getting that big win over the Seattle Seahawks. You saw Matthew Stafford look like the Matthew Stafford from the Super Bowl championship winning Los Angeles Rams, whereas San Francisco, they had a solid win over the Pittsburgh Steelers. They fairly easily won that game. Brock Purdy was dropping dimes out there. This game is on the road, but if San Francisco can go on the road and beat the Steelers, I think they can go on the road and beat and possibly improve Los Angeles Rams team. I'm going with San Francisco to beat the Los Angeles Rams 31-21. Then you have the New York Giants at the Arizona Cardinals. Arizona really struggled last week against the Washington Commanders. They kept the game kind of close. Joshua Dobbs filled in admirably for Kyler Murray, but it's not like he played that great. He just was more of a game manager. Whereas the New York Giants, they got destroyed last week against the Dallas Cowboys, losing 40-0. I think that their pride got hurt a little bit in that game, and I think you're going to see a Giants team that comes back out with a vengeance. Their defense is going to slow down Arizona. I don't think this is going to be a pretty game or a high-scoring game, but I'm going to go with the Giants to bounce back and win their first game of the season and beat the Arizona Cardinals 14-10. Then you've got the New York Jets at the Dallas Cowboys at 4:25 on CBS. This is another really solid game here. Could be one of the best games of the week 2 NFL slate. Dallas, they destroyed New York 40-0 last week, as I already mentioned. Dak Prescott was solid. The running game, the receiving game, and the defense all was working for Dallas, whereas the Jets pulled out a win over the Buffalo Bills on Monday Night Football with a punt return touchdown in overtime. Obviously, the breaking news that Aaron Rodgers is out for the season is a tough blow to the Jets. That is awful news. It really hurts because they made that trade, and a lot of Jets fans wanted to see what Aaron Rodgers could do with the Jets. Hopefully, he'll be able to come back off of his Achilles injury and be able to play next season for the Jets. But Zach Wilson, he did fill in admirably for Aaron Rodgers. He did have one pick, but as long as he doesn't make too many mistakes, I think the Jets could have a shot here. But I think without Aaron Rodgers and Zach Wilson having to go on the road at Dallas, which is a tough place to play, might make a couple mistakes. I don't think Dallas is going to win by as much as they did last week, but I'm going to go with the Cowboys to beat the Jets 35-24. Then you have the Washington Commanders traveling to the Denver Broncos. Denver last week, they were not able to beat the Las Vegas Raiders, whereas the Washington Commanders, they pulled out a win over the Arizona Cardinals. I don't think that these two teams are that far apart from each other in talent level, but Denver's still struggling. Russell Wilson is trying, but he just cannot replicate his type of play that he had earlier in his career, whereas Sam Howell looked pretty good in the Eric Bieniemy offense, and he was able to do enough for them to win. I think that the Commanders will win again over the Denver Broncos on the road 17-14. Then you have the Sunday night football game between the Miami Dolphins and the New England Patriots. That's another great game, one of the best games of the week 2 slate in the NFL. I'm looking forward to this one. one. Miami was able to beat the Los Angeles Chargers last week 36-34. Tua Tagovailoa threw for a bunch of yards. It's nice to see him back and healthy. Hopefully he can stay healthy. He threw for over 400 yards. He was dropping dimes all over the field to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. And the Patriots, they didn't beat the Philadelphia Eagles, but they were a solid-looking team at home last week, barely losing that game. Mac Jones had one of his better performances of his NFL career, and I think that with that home crowd, they'll have a great shot to win this game. But I'm actually going to go with Tua Tagovailoa and that offense to go on the road and beat the New England Patriots 31-24. I think this should be a great game on Sunday Night Football. New England has a great chance to get their first win of the season, but it's been two tough opponents that New England's had to play, and I think Miami might get the better of them in this game. Then you got the New Orleans Saints and the Carolina Panthers on Monday Night Football as a part of a doubleheader. Carolina needs this win to bounce back after an ugly performance against the Atlanta Falcons. Bryce Young really struggled. He made a couple of mistakes, throwing 2 picks. Carolina had a fumble as well, so they had 3 total turnovers. Their defense was solid, but if their offense could have played better, maybe they could have beat the Falcons, but they just couldn't get it done. Whereas New Orleans, they pulled out a win over the Tennessee Titans. New Orleans has a great defensive line, which I think is going to be able to overpower the Panthers' offensive line, get to Bryce Young in the backfield. The Panthers are at home in this game, whereas they were on the road at the Falcons, which I think will help out Carolina. Their crowd should definitely energize the team, but I do think that New Orleans defense will be too much and that their offense might be able to score just one more time than the Panthers and make one less mistake with Derek Carr at quarterback, who's a veteran, whereas Bryce Young's a rookie. I'm going with the New Orleans Saints to beat the Carolina Panthers 21-14. And for the last game of the Week 2 NFL slate, you got the Cleveland Browns traveling on the road to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Cleveland looked great last week, beating the Cincinnati Bengals, whereas the Pittsburgh Steelers got beat fairly easily by the San Francisco 49ers. I do think that the Cleveland Browns win was impressive. Deshaun Watson got the job done, but Cincinnati just did not look like themselves, whereas Pittsburgh had no shot against San Francisco. But this game is at Pittsburgh. It's going to be tough for the Cleveland Browns to go on the road. But if Cleveland does win this game, maybe we got to start giving them a bit more respect that they actually are a solid team. But I am going to go with the Pittsburgh Steelers, give them the benefit of the doubt at home. I think Kenny Pickett will run a little bit on that Cleveland Browns defense and be able to throw for enough yards, whereas maybe Cleveland will make a couple of mistakes on the road here. I'm going with the Pittsburgh Steelers to beat the Cleveland Browns 24-21 on Monday Night Football. Now, those are my picks for the Week 2 NFL games. There's a lot of solid matchups like the Kansas City Jacksonville game, Minnesota Philly, Miami New England, and Jets versus the Cowboys. Looking forward to all of these games. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Who will win these Week 2 NFL games and what games you possibly think could be upsets or what games you think will go right as expected. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Like this video down below. Follow me on Twitter as well. Link is in the description, and I will see you next time.